Here we go. The tracker right here, $130 billion in savings. That's $1,000 in savings per American household right there. That's what Brian says is adding to our deficit, which is
that the same tracker where they noted that $8 billion were cut when it was actually $8 million were cut? That the same tracker that they started taking credit for cuts that were made during the Biden administration? Just wanted to check if it's the same exact tracker that we're talking about here.
Benny Johnson absolutely shuts down Brian Tyler Cohen in this heated exchange on Piers Morgan Uncensored as Brian struggles to cope with Donald Trump racking up wins and the left is continuing to fall apart. Benny Johnson wastes no time rubbing it in, and he's loving absolutely every second of it. And you can see Brian squirming, trying to hold on to the usual talking points, but it's just not landing. Even Piers Morgan seems to agree with Benny Johnson, as the facts keep piling up and the excuses are just running absolutely dry. And let's jump into this clip of Benny Johnson dismantling Brian Tyler Cohen's meltdown on Piers Morgan Uncensored live.
Sure that as you roll out these very, very big things, you're not letting Americans who don't deserve it slip through the net, either being deported wrongly, losing Social Security wrongly, being fired wrongly, etc.
Well, look, I would say the easy analysis of this is to say that they're incompetent. And I do think that they're incompetent to a degree. But I also think that in large part, this is what they
Elon
want
Musk
to do.
isn't incompetent, is he? I mean, let's be clear. He's one of the most brilliant minds in America.
Which brings me to my second point, is in large part, this is what they want to do. I mean, they'll trot out their talking points, and Benny brought out one of these things that, they're looking to just get the debt under control. They're adding money to the deficit, which is going to explode the debt even further. And so like this notion that we're just getting our spending under control, they needed to try to cut a little bit so that they can, including Medicaid and food stamps, $880 billion in energy and commerce, which will cut Medicaid, $230 billion in the Agriculture Committee, which will cut food stamps, to try and offset just a fraction of what they're going to add by virtue of $4.5 trillion for a tax cut that's overwhelmingly going to favor millionaires and billionaires. So we can say that they're incompetent for some of the egregious things that they're doing, but in large part, they're doing exactly what they want to do. They're not focused on the debt. They're not focused on trying to help people or make sure that they have adequate health care or grow, add jobs or whatever it is. They are doing what they need to do for the people that they're looking to help. And that is overwhelmingly people who are exactly like Elon Musk. And by the way, Piers, I would take issue with how you framed Elon, because he's not doing this as some benevolent patriotic figure.
Well, he's not being paid.
He was under investigation by nearly every single agency that he and Donald Trump have gutted, whether through gutting the agency itself or firing the inspectors general. Department of Labor, NLRB, USAID, CFPB, EPA, and so this isn't some indication of like benevolence by this patriotic figure.
Yeah, but hang on.
He's deriving
being investigated or even sued. That's perfectly reasonable, normal business practice. It's whether those investigations or lawsuits lead to anything being actively overturned or then being punished for it. Trump is already on the record as saying, look, I will accept the ruling of judges on these things if we get challenged, but I'm not going to be blasted off my mission statement I made as a candidate. Many people would say, and I think there's merit to this, Trump is doing exactly what he said he'd do. And you might quibble whether they're going to reduce the debt or not. You can't tell after 10 weeks whether an administration can reduce the debt. You can after 2 years, and if they haven't reduced the debt after 2 years, then they're going to get a shellacking in the midterms and probably get a shellacking in the next general election. But I do think trying to assess whether what they're doing at the moment can reduce the debt is a bit preposterous after only, 10 weeks?
Well, it's not preposterous if you have the CBO score that shows exactly how much is going to be added to the debt. And so again, if you're passing it, I mean, it's just math, right? If you're cutting programs that don't amount to as much as you're adding by virtue of these tax cuts, then you are going to add to the deficit, and that's going to balloon the debt, which is to say nothing, by the way, of the amount of federal revenues that are shrinking by virtue of the fact that the economy is doing poorly right now.
Well, it is, except I would say, Benny, if I'm Donald Trump, that his own approval rating has never been higher as a president.
No.
I mean, it's never been higher. So
the Democrat Party's approval rating has never been lower.
The Democrats are at record lows.
You can just see that Brian is freaking out, saying, we've only got 10 weeks, just 10 weeks. I mean, like, seriously? Even Piers Morgan called that out. 10 weeks isn't a lot of time. They haven't even touched the Pentagon yet. They're just starting to go through Social Security and the areas where the government spends the most money. And clearly, it's driving Brian crazy because, as even Piers Morgan pointed out, Trump is seeing some of the highest approval ratings right now, and most Americans support what him and Elon Musk were doing before they had their whole fallout just now, cutting through all the waste and holding people accountable. Meanwhile, the Democrats are at their lowest point in the years, and people just aren't listening to them anymore. They're not listening to anything they have to say. So Brian can melt down all he wants. The left has had 4 years to fix things, and they've only made it worse. And now people are ready to give Trump another shot? I mean, why not? At least he's actually awake and getting things done, unlike sleepy Joe Biden. And in just 10 weeks, we've already seen results in savings from what Doge is uncovering. So yeah, watching Brian lose it over these kind of things, I just think is hilarious. And if you guys like this type of content, make sure to go ahead and hit that like button, comment your thoughts, subscribe to the channel. It would help me out a lot. And let's get back to the clip, guys.
So Americans do not want to hear a word from the Democrats. They're done with them. They're done with the woke stuff. And they're actually pretty broadly supportive of Trump. Which is, I mean, if you're Trump, you're probably saying, I hear all the squealing. I don't care. I've got a mandate. I won everything in the election, and I'm going to deliver exactly what I said I'd do. And it might take him a bit of time, but I'm a little bit more patient about this. I think I do see methods of the madness. I do see the border being sorted. I do see an attack on government waste as being very popular with the American people, and so on. So I just think it's too early to say this is all not going to work. Demonstrably, some of it is working and is popular with the public.
Here we go. The tracker right here, $130 billion in savings. That's $1,000 in savings per American household right there. That's what Brian says is adding to our deficit, which is
that the same tracker
talk.
where they noted that $8 billion were cut when it was actually $8 million were cut? That the same tracker that they started taking credit for cuts that were made during the Biden administration? Just wanted to check if it's the same exact tracker that we're talking about here.
Brian's stance here is that we should raise taxes. And I want him to carry that
My
forward.
stance is that we should raise taxes. All I'm pointing out is that the tracker
higher taxes. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again, Brian. I want you to run for DNC chair. Okay, maybe you could take Harry Siston's job, all right, as the #1 DNC influencer, since he's getting canceled right now. You could take Harry's job. You could work with David Hogg, and you can run on higher taxes for American. And you can say that $37 trillion in debt is okie dokie to me. That's what you can do. And you can burn a Tesla dealership down while you're at it.
If you think debt
bring that
is
message
bad,
to the American people. I want you to do it.
If you think debt is
I want
bad,
you to do it. How do I make it happen?
If you think debt is bad, how do you answer for the fact that we are adding debt that based on the CBO score, we're adding debt, and your deity, Donald Trump, added $7.8 trillion to the debt during his first term? Where are these fiscally conservative Republicans?
Yeah, I don't want anyone to add anything to the debt. The vast majority of that came during COVID. We all know what a bizarro time that was. And I don't think that anyone's trying to defend that. Donald Trump has proven time and time again he wants to cut government spending and cut efficiency, cut government spending, add efficiency, and cut our deficit. The deficit is a killer. You cannot run a household or a business when you are in debt. When you're spending $4, you take in $1, you spend $4. That's what the country is doing right now.
Benny, he's never done it.
He's
never done it. You keep saying that he wants to do things that he's never done.
It's like amazing. He's been in office for 2 months.
Well, he didn't have 4 years. Hang on, Brian.
Well, hold on.
Brian, he didn't have 4 years. He had 3 years and a pandemic.
The highest revenues.
It would have been interesting what would have happened.
The highest revenues.
Without the pandemic, Trump's economic record in the first term would have been a lot better. I've always said Trump would have won that.
Benny Johnson just comes in strong with the facts and lays them out in front of Brian Tyler Cohen, and you can see Brian just can't handle it. He starts freaking out instead of actually responding. And I mean, look, mistakes were made, but the key difference here is that Trump's team owned up to them, fixed them, and just kept the ball going. That's what responsible leadership looks like. They're cutting wastes, finding fraud, and trying to get things back on track. And Benny is clearly enjoying putting that truth front and center. Brian tries to deflect by bringing up the national debt under Trump. And I mean, sure, the debt went up, but most of that was because of COVID, not bad leadership. We were still doing well economically at the time. Gas was cheap, people were working, and the country was in a good place until the shutdown. And let's be real, guys, it wasn't Trump's side pushing for endless lockdowns. It was the Democrats. Republicans warned that shutting down the country would hurt the economy and drive the debt back up. They were mocked for wanting to reopen, but they were right. So when Brian tries to blame Trump for all the spending, it's just not honest. The left pushed those policies, and now they're running from the results, and Trump's just trying to clean it all up. But honestly, it doesn't matter what facts are put in front of Brian or people like him. They've made up their minds. Everything Trump does is bad in their eyes. Even if it helps the country, they just can't admit that their side failed, and they never will. Let me know what you guys think about this topic in the comments, and I'll see you guys in the next video.